Welcome back to the second installment of making a Macintosh hunting kilt from double width cloth. I just have just enough time to film this episode before I have to head out the door to the day job. So, okay, motion sickness alert. So here we are. We can see that I have sewn the seam there, and this high-vis shirt is going to mess up the camera, so let's just take that off. And it's relatively hard to see, right? And this is the middle pleat, right there. And again, when that's in place, it's hidden on the upper face of this fold. Great. So that's our middle. So let's lay out the kilt. Now, generally, when I'm working with single width cloth, I will do this before I reduce the kilt to its final height. But this is double width, so I have to risk losing a few strands off the edge because of that. Okay, so we have 36 waist, 42 hip. I'm going to divide the apron, the split between apron and pleats at the waist to 20-inch apron, 16-inch pleats, 21 at the hip, 21, which is heavy. Now, normally, if you're pleating to the stripe, the central feature, or the element, whatever you want to call it, the central feature that you're centering the pleat on, conventionally, that will also be the center of the front apron. But we can't do that because that would put the center of the apron here, and your eye would be drawn to the two most prominent element, the one most prominent element, the yellow stripe, and it would just look off center. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to decide. I think I'm just going to go with centering the apron on the most prominent element because that's what the eye is drawn to. I could center it on the blue line, but I can't remember if this person is going to be wearing a sporran or not. Because if they're wearing a sporran, that sort of offsets, that distracts the eye from the most prominent element not being centered, right? Correct? But yeah, for the purpose of this vid, let's carry on with marking it, centering it on the most prominent element, the yellow stripe. And I'm going to send the customer an email, actually, as soon as I finish recording this, asking, are you wearing a sporran, yes or no? Because that might influence our decision. Okay. Now, the fell, of course, is 8, and I just pushed it down a quarter inch to the top of the red line because it's just going to be easier that way. Now, 20 inches, 10 and 20, so there's now this client is female, so I'm bringing the strap and buckle up half an inch. From 2.5, I'm bringing it up to 2 inches. So it's going to be just about centered, actually, there. Fell doesn't change, and it's 21 inches, so 10.5, 21, 21. And now we can see that we have more than adequate material left for the fold, the right edge of the outside apron, and enough extra so that we can rip 2 strips to be to provide the fringe. Cool. Okay, let's go to the other end. Oh, actually, one more thing. Let's go. Is this the first pleat? There's the edge of the deep pleat, and it's a quarter. It's just about a quarter of the total width. And remember, my preference is to get ideally from between a quarter and a third of the total width. If I went to the next pleat, it would be 50%. And there's a chance, maybe, I mean, that's too deep, really. But I could also deal with that by turning this into a bellows pleat, by having the depth, by very quickly and inaccurately doing that, turning it into a bellows pleat. But I may come back and take a second look at that, because I want a proper deep pleat. Okay, we've done one end, and provisionally I've marked the first pleat being there. Let's go to the other end. And I'm fortunate I am fortunate, I should say, enunciate a little more clearly, that this is not a complicated tartan, that it has many bold elements, but it's not too terribly busy, because that can complicate matters. Okay, inside apron. Now you can see I've already marked some marks. The first thing I do generally is I'll do my hand span from the edge of the cloth, because I don't want that to be less than that, ideally, because that provides a bit of weight to the outside of the apron, less important because it's the inner apron, but it also provides a reservoir of cloth to be used in the advent that the customer grows more important, shall we say. Okay, so I always grab the wrong end of the tape. If I center the pleat, or sorry, if I center the apron rather on the strongest element, the second element, shall we say, and I put there's 20 inches, 21 inches. When I come to sew this, I might well add an inch at the waist, because again, we like that that backing bit of tartan, so that when the strap passes through the buttonhole, we don't risk pinching the wearer on the hip. Okay, if I went there, yeah, that's another, if that's my meeting place, that's a quarter. If I go to that one, again, see, it's very nearly half. Very nearly half. Again, do I want to turn that into a bellows pleat so that we have that extra cloth? Let's try it both ways. Right now, let's pretend there's the edge. It goes to there. Therefore, this would be the first pleat going there. So if that's the first pleat, and I'm going to do it in a different color just to keep it straight in my own mind, because this is the first, right now this is the first pleat for a 1/4 inch deep pleat. Sorry, a 1/4 width deep pleat. This would be my first pleat if I was going for the 1/2 width deep pleat, which I'd then turn into a bellows. Great. Okay, let's count how many pleats we got then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Good. 25. Odd number of pleats, because we want that. We need a center pleat at the back. At least I do. Okay. 25 pleats. Now, 16 inches at the waist. I pull down my handy dandy sheet. I go to number of pleats. 16 inches at the waist. Well, if I go down to 5/8, a pleat 5/8 of an inch wide, I get 15 and 5/8. That's, of course, more than half. So I think a 1/2 inch play there is acceptable, given that if I, get granted the width of the chalk, I might well get bang on 16, but a 1/2 inch allowance is just fine, because we can make up for that again by just making the apron half inch wider. Okay, so 5 inch, the pleat will be 5 inches wide at the waist. I have 21 at the hip. I come down here, and it's a 7/8 inch pleat. Gives me 21 and 7/8, which is almost 22. But we want a little bit more ease at the waist anyway, at the seat, I should say. A little more ease at the seat anyway. So that's entirely acceptable. 7/8. So a 5 inch wide pleat will be 5 inch wide at the waist, 7/8 at the seat. Good. And again, we can, if we want to be exact, like working to machine-like tolerances, after having sewn it to that, you can make the apron just a tiny bit narrower. Frankly, in my experience, it rarely, if ever, presents a problem. See, look how quick that was. Awesome. Great. And I'm going to send off the email to the client asking about the whether they're going to be wearing a sporran. And after that, I have to head off to the day job. So let's just fold this neatly so that it's waiting for me upon my return. Okay. Right, there we go. Talk to you later. Motion sickness alert.